Tackle today, Matt and Mark Justice Brothers, bringing you all of the charts, all of the key stories, all of the analysis in a concise manner each and every day. We have some interesting stocks to discuss. NVIDIA after the bell. Markets hesitating before the big release of NVIDIA. Some contract rollovers in commodities. We're going to break it all down. Matt, let's start with the S&P 500, and then let's look at the NASDAQ, and then we'll bounce over to the RSP. Classic hesitation right now after a big run up. I don't know if it's more complicated than that right now. Now, after NVIDIA's reports tonight, eventually this pattern is going to give one way or another. What are you seeing on the technicals?
Yeah, technicals, very similar picture as we've been detailing this over the last couple days. And Mark, I think what you said at the first is exactly right. This is what you expect to see happen after a V-shaped recovery. You're definitely going to want to see a secondary pattern to justify the initial upward movement in price. And the market's playing defense up here at the top end of the range, hasn't really given up anything on the support level, just real decent hesitation in front of a multiple time frame breakout. You look at that on the daily chart, looks ready for a breakout. You look on the weekly chart, and you could certainly see a little bit more development on the weekly chart, but you don't get to pick the timing of the breakout. You get to pick the level that the market can break out and wait on that pattern to really give you that probability edge. And that's what you got on the daily chart. So daily chart's ready to break out. Weekly chart could hesitate a little bit, but at the end of the day, you're talking about a fairly clean environment in the S&P 500 and a very clean trigger above 565 on this potential breakout as we go into NVIDIA's earnings report later on tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been real weakness in in the NASDAQ this week. Maybe some extra hesitation in the tech-heavy NASDAQ ahead of NVIDIA's report, but a little bit of a different look, Matt. What do you see from a technical perspective?
Yeah, a little bit of a different look here, but a little fading action versus the defensive posture that the S&P 500. But I wouldn't parse too much out of this in the Qs. Obviously, Jackson Hole was a good cyclical moment for the cyclical side of the equation, for the defensive side of the equation. The aggressive was hesitating in front of NVIDIA, and we talked about that in the newsletter. We talked about that in the tackle today yesterday, and that's kind of the analysis here today is just a little bit of profit taking in front of NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is going to reset this conversation when it comes to the Qs, the NASDAQ, AI. And so you're certainly expecting a different technical perspective tomorrow. So I wouldn't parse too much difference in terms of the Qs versus the spiders right now. I have them running on a little bit of the same gasoline. Obviously, the Qs a little bit hotter, but the Qs are typically a little bit hotter than the SPY is in general. I think in terms of just today's relative outperformance, you got some hesitation on NVIDIA, number one. And then number two, you had some negative information coming out on Supermicrochip Computer, which is one of the bigger growth names in the AI conversation. And we'll talk about them in stocks in the news. So I think you can certainly understand the context for today's underperformance, but in general, I just think there's a little bit of hesitation in front of NVIDIA.
Yeah, and give me RSP chart real quick, because call me old-fashioned, but I'm not going to turn bearish on days where I see your average stock high basing and actually up, in a pretty nice developing pattern.
No, I don't even know why we would even bring up the conversation of I'm not going to turn bearish, because this is just a bullish conversation as of right now.
Because I like to be snarky.
Well, no, I get it. I get it. I get why you did it. I'm just saying I don't understand why the bearishness is in that sentence, because you're talking about a really good trend here at this point. Multiple time frame breakout in RSP, which is the equal weighted S&P 500, showing you a little bit more consistency in the cyclical and the defensive areas versus what we're seeing in the Qs. But in general, what you do have at the top end of a trend is just a little bit of consolidation. 2 days of consolidation, you make it 3, 4, 5, 6 days of consolidation. That will be a beautiful look as the 9 EMA does catch up. But I do expect the market to move a little bit tomorrow with NVIDIA. Not only NVIDIA, but you got the preliminary GDP report tomorrow as well. So you would certainly expect volatility to pick up tomorrow.
Yeah, we don't have any economic news to report on. They're literally the trading deities basically said no economic reports today. We're going to focus on NVIDIA after the bell exclusively, but we do have a few stocks in the news of interest, including Super Microchip Computer, which you just mentioned.
Yeah, two things happened on Super Microchip Computer over the last 24 hours. Number one, Hindenburg Research came out with a note saying they are in an active short position on Super Microchip Computer. And Hindenburg, when they come out and target a stock, that is not a good look. No company wants to be targeted by Hindenburg Research. And Super Microchip Computer was yesterday, basically Hindenburg accusing the company of accounting manipulation. And then what happened today, instead of coming out to the defense of Super Microchip Computer came out today and said, yeah, we're going to delay our fiscal year 2024 10K filing. And it's just like, well, wait a second.
I literally out loud said, wow, really?
I don't know if the report out of Hindenburg forced SMCI to come out with that report today, but a really, really bad look out of SMCI here today. And quite frankly, the number one reason why I do think you're seeing relative underperformance in the Qs versus what you're seeing in the SPY today is because of Super Microchip Computer. And then obviously NVIDIA here. NVIDIA is the kingpin of the AI conversation. They're the number one stock when it comes to the growth aspect of the marketplace. And the market is relying on NVIDIA. I've heard more than one institution this week say NVIDIA is the market, and I can't disagree with it, especially when you're talking about those aggressive asset classes, the Max 7 components. NVIDIA is such an important company for the growth side of the equation. And so expectations are very high for NVIDIA. NVIDIA guided at the top end of the range last quarter at 28 billion. I don't think there's an institution in the world right now that is expecting less than 28 billion when it comes to their revenue. I think everybody and their dog is expecting a beat on EPS, a beat on revenue. And what it's actually going to come down to is the guidance numbers. What does NVIDIA say about the future? The future is all that's important when it comes to this AI conversation. And with ASML and earlier in the earnings season, given a little bit of concern to the growth side of the equation, and then having a mixed result throughout earnings season on the semiconductor AI side of the equation, I just think NVIDIA is here to reset that conversation. And the market is primed to break out, but again, it's primed to break out on a catalyst, and you don't know what those catalysts are going to do, especially when it comes to the earnings and how the market sees the numbers coming in. You asked me last night what my personal thoughts on it are on NVIDIA, and it has to start with beats. If it doesn't start with beats, we're probably going to be talking about a profit taking session in the general market.
Yeah, no, and then if a lot of analysis, we'll save it. You had one more. As a pet lover, I'm not going to let you skirt on this one.
No, CHWY, the pet company out there, they came out with a really good report here today. They beat on EPS. They came in line on revenue, and then on their guidance side of the equation, they did guide at the top end of the range, and in fact, probably increase the top end of the range just slightly there as well. 28% beat on the EPS was very, very good. And when you are looking at the technical side of the equation, let's take a look at CHWY very quickly. CHWY gapping out of that 27.5 level. Nice breakout here following a really good head and shoulders formation. That looks really good from a
That's what the market wants to look like tomorrow for bulls.
100%. 100%. That's what you want to see. But on CHWY, you also kind of stopped right at that 30 number, which is overhead. And that's a beautiful zone to start getting into some consolidation, high base analysis. Anything on the continuation side above 30 looks pretty good when it comes to CHWY and their positive earnings report. We did talk about NVIDIA. NVIDIA is just doing a little bit of hesitation. I don't think you're seeing too much difference between NVIDIA and the NASDAQ itself. And then when you're looking at Super Microchip Computer, the third stock in the news here today, just the gap down, sell down behavior, and a really tough look for Super Microchip Computer, which doesn't have any major support levels. I mean, you could certainly look at 400 that has the 20 period, but Mark, you start working into some pockets where
it's one of the problems with big moves up.
Yeah.
Like when you have big moves up and you can't hold, those are some big moving average pockets.
Well, and right here at $400, Mark, there's not a lot of support till you start working into
Yeah,
$300, and $300 is just an old resistance zone, which hypothetically could act as a new support zone. You really don't have support until you start working into the 240 to 220 range, and so it's a bad look for SMCI. Terrible to have Hindenburg research to kind of be in on your target, but this doesn't look like it's over. This looks like the beginning of something. It might not conclude until we start working in to those lower levels of support. Rapid fire style, Mark, on stocks in the new Harmony Gold had earnings. They had a fairly decent earnings, a little bit of muted response, but I do like the technical condition post earnings as you're fighting that really good support level right around 10. Keep an eye on confirmation above 10.5 on Harmony Gold. Abercrombie and Fitch had a interesting report in the sense that they beat and gapped down. Not a good look for Abercrombie, which has been a beautiful runner for a long time. But now you're starting to see that little bit of that same issue here. The beautiful runner. Well, Mark, on the downside, they create these pockets. And these pockets are not fun to navigate in any capacity. So a little bit of a negative reaction to a positive story out of Abercrombie and Fitch. Sentinel-1 also had a earnings report here today. A nice little reversal happening on Sentinel-1. Keep an eye on 30. 30 is a significant hold number. It's also the confirmation of a W formation coming out of Sentinel-1 in the market as well. Just wanted to rapid fire some stocks in the news as well.
absolutely. And like I mentioned, no economic data to report on. We do have unemployment claims tomorrow morning, along with some housing data and the second print of GDP. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But Matt, some mixed action out there in commodities. Bitcoin particularly getting hit hard. Other areas of the market, commodity market, having a hard time pushing through resistance levels. Fire through some charts for us.
Yeah, when we're looking at the global markets, the commodity space, you got to start with the dollar here. And like we talked about yesterday on the dollar, just a little bit of an overextended type situation, and certainly look to get that dialed in. Whether and massive support underneath, so it could take a little bit of time to get that dialed in. When it comes to the commodities themselves, looking at gold showing a little bit of hesitation at the top here, but nothing too concerning in any capacity. Just really kind of hovering around that 9 EMA and kissing up against the all-time high price action. When you're looking at silver and copper, these are the two areas of the market that are starting to turn around a little bit. Nice little V-shaped recovery on silver, fighting overhead resistance, and certainly would be looking at any secondary trigger above this little cluster of resistance over the last 2 to 3 days. On the copper side of the equation, again, an improving condition. Tried to get going earlier today, but still fighting against that overall reversal type fill on copper. So silver, copper, trying their best to get up and run, but got smacked by resistance. Gold showing a little bit downward movement in price. Like I talked about yesterday, in this environment, a lot of the things are anchoring against the dollar right now. With the dollar going up here today, we're just seeing a little bit of downward pressure in price, but I wouldn't read too much into that on a very slow news day in front of the biggest news story of the week, and that would be the obviously NVIDIA. And so a lot of hesitation, I would say, in the market in front of NVIDIA tonight. Now, you might ask why NVIDIA and copper and silver and whatnot. NVIDIA is going to have a market move, Mark. And I do think there's hesitation in general in the market due to that.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We're going to continue these conversations more broadly. I do want to look at the volatility in Bitcoin, though, and get your technical take here. Pretty nasty, like kind out of nowhere kind of action the last couple of days, Matt.
Yeah, just a tough look here off a really good, nice little trigger with that big green candle coming up above that 50-period moving average, but got snuffed by 65K and then on the downside. I wouldn't read too much into it. Bitcoin has volatility. It wakes up with volatility. It goes to bed with volatility. And so I wouldn't read too much into the volatility here. In general, just not the weekly chart here just doesn't give you a lot of confidence. in a lot of different capacities. And with the downward pressure in price, you don't even think that's going to work back up into 70K. So in terms of the overall technical read, just a really, really tough look on Bitcoin here over the last couple of days, but not as bad of a look as what you're seeing on Ethereum, in my estimation. Ethereum has a really tough support level that if you pass, that's one thing, but it doesn't look like it wants to. It's fighting right around that 2,500 level. Mark, you give that 2,500 level, you're giving up the 50 weekly, you're giving up a lot, and you're probably working down to 2K. And so keep an eye on Ethereum. That looks like it wants to break a little bit of support, underperforming what we're seeing in Bitcoin in general, but not a good look in the crypto space in general right now. Not a clean look. Not there's not an opportunity here as of right now.
No, we're going to continue to have. I love the Traders Lounge. Matt and I, either one of us, sometimes both of us, are on it every single day, answering questions, giving analysis, finding trade setups, managing positions. Come see what it's all about. 15-day free trial. Go to tackletrading.com. Come join us.